Hello and welcome to Coffee Break. It's Steve Barrett here, Editorial Director of PR Week. We should really call it McCafe Break this week because we've got Michael Gonda here, who's VP of Global Comms at McDonald's. Michael, how are you doing? And welcome to Coffee Break or McCafe Break.
I'm great. I love the rebrand. And seriously, thank you for giving the time. It's awesome to be able to get with you, to take a bit of a break and share some of what's going on.
Yeah, it's good to have you on the show. And we did a story on you last week, coming out with some new purpose guidance. And we're going to chat about that a bit and your McPlant, your meatless product introduction. But let's talk a bit about your COVID lockdown experience, because you've welcomed a new child into the world 6 months ago. So it's been a pretty crazy time for you. How's it been? And how's it been for you and the family and the team?
Well, thank you for asking that. And yeah, it was this amazing silver lining. Our daughter was born in May. So if you think about just the cycle of the pandemic, there was a lot of uncertainty. Is it going to end soon? Is it going to continue forever? And we had the joy of being able to just focus on a new addition. And I think that, frankly, a lot of members of my team have been welcoming new children into their families. We've been just trading stories about what that's all been like. And I think by and large, it brings an element of stress, but it's been incredible.
I think there's certainly going to be a few COVID babies in Q1 next year. That's what I'm hearing from my friends anyway.
Yeah, we've been reading that, and I think again, there's certainly a lot of new members from our Mick family coming in. So
yeah,
we've seen a bit of it too.
That's a nice story in tough times. How have you managed as a team, and how's the company been managing? You've done sort of financial results releases. You've done employee engagement, I guess, with the CEO. Talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, I think at the outset of the pandemic, and it's hard to even think about from way to the beginning of the year. We talked about priority 1, 2, 3, and 4 being well-being and taking care of yourself. The idea that you won't be able to endure in this environment for this kind of a brand with this level of uncertainty if you're not prioritizing at every turn your own well-being and that of your family and your friends. And I frankly think it's just really hard to do. I think it's one thing to talk about it and to even get the support. We get that from the top of our company. But then crisis emerges, or an opportunity emerges, and it becomes really challenging to make the trade-off to say, no, I'm going to spend and guard this time for myself. And if anything keeps me up at night from this pandemic, it's people having a really hard time putting themselves first. I would say we're doing well, but I don't think anyone is at full speed on that, because there's just so much unpredictability.
Yeah, I think after 9 months, I think we've all come to realize that, haven't we? We thought it might be 2 or 3 months, and then it just went on and on. And I know there are new lockdown regulations in Chicago. So do you see any sort of, and I have seen you back in the office, at certain points, but do you see any sign of going back in en masse anytime soon?
So I was one of the fortunate few. I was going into the office and we weren't having any real in-person meetings. And that was just out of necessity for me. We're in an apartment. We've got young kids and loud dogs. I don't think that, I think soon is relative. I think we are many months away from being back in the office and working, even at par normal or subnormal environments. I think we got a ways to go. And when you read about a vaccine, which is very exciting, it becomes clear that for that to be generally accessible, we've still got a ways to go for that. And we're an open work environment. We've got this awesome headquarters, but it's very open. So that's challenges.
What about from communications point of view? A lot of brands put a stop to marketing and sort of communications, or they sort of pivoted to more talking about what they were doing to give back to the community or to retool production or whatever it is, whatever's relevant, giving food to, feeding America. How did you approach that? I know Coca-Cola, for example, just stopped all its marketing. What was the McDonald's approach to that?
Yeah, I think for us, the pandemic around the world, we're in 120 different markets. So that's 120 different countries experiencing this relatively the same thing at the same time. And for us, that obviously is a challenge in so many levels. for our crew, for our customers, for our franchisees, but it is also an opportunity to show how there's a common thread in terms of how an organization like McDonald's is prioritizing its communities, and food donation for sure, programs for crew, programs for frontline responders. What was amazing to see is whether you were operating in Honduras or the United States or South Africa, you were seeing these common levels or common actions of community service. And that was not because it was a comms program. That was deeply authentic and inherent in the organization. What you've seen from McDonald's over the last couple of weeks even is, well, how do we just sharpen that story? Because people do want to hear about that, even if they're one of the 2.5 million people that are working within the McDonald's system, or the 68 million or so people that visit McDonald's on any given day. They want to know, what is McDonald's doing? And that's been, for us, a real focus throughout the pandemic is to share.
Yeah, it's a good point. And to what you were saying last week, you announced a renewed focus on purpose, but you felt that your purpose was slightly intangible and maybe it was a little old-fashioned. So talk about how the process of how you came about a more modernized purpose, and presume that has to come from an authentic place. You can't just add on a modern purpose. So how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, and it's really been it's been a year journey. It was clear towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year, a new CEO coming in and just asking 3 very specific questions. What is our purpose? What is our mission? What are our values? And it wasn't an act, as he talked about, of creation. It was more an act of translation. Do we know what those are? And most importantly, do our people know what those are? And I think the answer was, there are these, as I said, intangible truths about what McDonald's has stood for 65 years. But sitting here today in 2020, not enough people could answer those 3 things. And we spent a lot of time talking with franchisees, with crew, with corporate employees, with customers, to say, well, this is what we think we stand for. We think we really are about 40,000 or so restaurants around the world. We think our role there is to feed people and to foster community. But how does that sit with you? And usually when you go about those exercises, when you're fielding research and having conversations across many markets, it becomes a bit of death by data, where you get all this conflicting and complicating information. It was interesting in this case. It was resoundingly clear that people wanted that from McDonald's, and they believed that McDonald's could fulfill that purpose. And that was very clarifying, a bit liberating, and a relief as well. But then that became a grounding for us. Okay, that is the center of all of our communications. We feed and we foster community. And then we started to look at some of the areas underneath that, and that was a tremendous amount of work. It takes every department in an organization getting behind it, and I think in fact COVID helped to accelerate the importance of that endeavor.
How much of that was down to Katie Farrel, the new hire, looking at an overarching role that includes comms, but also purpose and sustainability? What has Katie brought to the organization in terms of leadership on that front? Yeah,
I think it speaks to certainly where the organization.
Katie Fallon, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Got to get her name right.
I think it speaks to where the organization is, that actions have to meet communications, and that there's collaboration, the team sport that's always inherent in an organization, but there needs to be a function responsible for a corporation's reputation. And that's not just what it says, but that is inherently what it does. And in creating a global impact team, I think that's a big double down on that pursuit. And I think it shows just how seriously, certainly our CEO, but McDonald's at large is taking this challenge and this opportunity.
Yeah, and some interesting, you're working with some agencies, RGA, Wyden and Kennedy, Weber Shandwick, Jack Morton. So you've brought in some new external partners. Just talk briefly about those choices.
Yeah. I'll say that, the one thing, touching on agency, and this is probably a bit of a tangent, so stop me if it's uninteresting, but we talk about well-being a lot within our employees and our teams. I think that there's a responsibility from the client side to be thinking about that on their agency, within their agency partners as well. I mean, having come from the agency world and doing crisis work, I know that you're hardwired to do anything and everything you can to fulfill the needs of a client. In the last couple of months, it's become clear to me that a client's responsibility is to think about how they utilize in their teams. Are they protecting their well-being as much as they are their own flock? And I think that's been an eye-opener for all of us. The reason is you get better work, you get better partnership, you get better creativity. We've been fortunate in the last couple of months to bring in some extraordinary partners to help us do some really hard things. And you mentioned, a number of them. Jack Morton had the challenge of helping us translate a global convening that would be compelling and creative and resonant and live from Chicago. That's really hard to do. And they did an extraordinary job with that. Weber helped us translate some of this purpose work into actions that will resonate with customers. And you'll see some of that coming out in the next couple of weeks. Brunswick was really great with strategy and us, thinking about our corporate reputation. And then RGA, we had an opportunity to just step up our doorstep to the world, which is our digital platforms. And, we've been fortunate as we took on this really difficult, daunting task to bring these partners on and ask them to work collaboratively together. And I think they've done just extraordinary work for us.
You obviously have a longest standing relationship with Golin. You work with We as well. Where does it leave those relationships?
Yeah, and so a lot of the initiatives I was talking about was more at what we call the center, the global level. Our markets have deep relationships with existing agencies as well. And Golin, for instance, one of the longest, if not longest, standing partners in the marketing and communication space for McDonald's. And all the agencies you mentioned are deeply important, specifically within the U.S. And then these other partners we really didn't have at the global level before, because as a corporation, at least in recent history, we haven't necessarily articulated purpose or developed a campaign that was coming from the center. So this gives us an opportunity to bring in partners that help us define globally what the campaigns will be, what the purpose is, what the components are, and then activate those locally within our 120 or so markets.
Let's finish by talking about the McPlant. You launched that last week as well. It probably had a mixed reaction, but I guess anything like that it's the meatless product, and we've seen the rise of that segment, and we've seen lots of chains team up with different providers. Talk us about how you planned for that and what was your reaction to the launch, and would you have done it differently, or is that just what's going to happen with launches like that?
Well, no, it's interesting. So we announced that as part of our investor update, and we knew that that news was going to be magnetic, and really electrifying. So one, there was a lot else that we announced that day. We talked about a new vision for drive-through, a new vision for digital experiences, a whole new vision around our menu, and really doubling down on our core, what we call our core menu, so the classic favorites. But it was clear that McPlant, because of the interest in plant-based just around the world, and especially in the U.S., would capture eyeballs. The funny thing, I think Diana wrote about this as well, is just the naming of it. Whether it's McDonald's or previously within other CPG brands, there's always so much debate around names, regardless of what you're talking about. Then you take a category like this one, and people have a real strong point of view. I actually think it's encouraging to see people's interest. It's if people don't care what you call it, if they don't care what you're doing, I think you've got a bigger problem. For us, McPlant is a platform, so it's not a product. It is a platform that says this will be our point of view when it comes to plant-based products. And our CEO said, very clearly in the investor update, and then in some interviews after, that he believes that there is a long-term interest and a role for plant-based, and McDonald's wants a sharp point of view on it. It's going to come down to market by market, essentially, when consumers and if consumers are ready for it. So certainly you're seeing in Europe, we'll be testing some more of the McPlant options, and we'll see what that means for markets like the US and other markets down the road.
Just quickly to finish then, so are you going to be teaming up with one of the plant-based burger companies? Because we've seen other fast food outlets do that. Or is it going to be a pure McDonald's play?
So we don't create our own supply. So whether we're talking about the patties in our burgers or the potatoes in our fries, we work with suppliers. So we'll certainly work with suppliers like we do with all of our other products, like we've done forever. In terms of, I think the hot question is, well, which supplier? I think that the reality is, as Chris was saying, is in his interviews last week, we're just not there yet. We're not elaborating more on that front.
I thought you were going to give us a McCafe exclusive there, Michael, but we will certainly look out for that one.
I mean, fortunately, my team isn't here, so if they heard me give an exclusive, I think blood would rush from the body. But no, I'm not going to do that.
All right. Well, congratulations on your new arrival, and we're looking forward to seeing how the new purpose positioning plays out, and more progress on McPlant. It's great to chat to you.
Hey, thank you. I mean, thank you for doing this. It's been awesome to be able to hear other people's perspectives and how they're enduring, this work from home or work from wherever environment. Feel very privileged to be able to talk about some of what the team's been up to, and love this series. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Thank you for that, and take care.
All right, Steve. You too.